rest is not something that you have to earn. It is important. It's actually a leadership skill in itself, because rest and recovery improves your overall performance. Welcome to The Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps, and that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the new season of the Fearless Foodie podcast. It is great to be back, and I wanted to start this series by talking about when work won't leave your head. And the reason I wanted to do that, I look back over, I've done, I don't even know how many podcast episodes now, about 250 podcast episodes. And one of the highest number of downloads was an episode around how to switch off from work. So if you've clicked on this because you're like, you see the title and you think, I need that, you're not alone. Like, lots of people are feeling that. And I just want to talk to you about that feeling when you're halfway through cooking dinner, or you're trying to play with the kids, or you're trying to have a conversation with your other half and you realise that you're still in that meeting that happened today in your head, or you're thinking about the retailer presentation you've got tomorrow. And I know that you're thinking to yourself, why the flipping heck can I not just switch off from work? And I hear it from people across the food industry, probably not just the food industry, but that's the people I talk to. The reality is, it's a really fast-paced industry. We have deadlines all the time. We are launching stuff. We're under pressure. There's technical issues. There's products get out the door. All of that stuff is so pressurised. And the thing is, your brain is actually doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's not broken. It's doing what it's doing because it's trying to protect you from danger. But today I'm going to talk to you about why it feels so hard to switch your brain off, and actually what is happening on a physiological level. So what's happening in your brain and your body. And I'm going to talk to you about practical ways to calm your nervous system. And I think it's particularly relevant to anybody working in pretty much every function of the food industry, but those that are in time critical departments, you know, where it's like deadlines, you've got to get stuff out the door, all of that sort of stuff, or, you know, you're under pressure on a daily basis. And I want you to listen to this episode because I'm going to help you get to the point where you are able to think clearer and you're going to recover better and be able to switch off to a certain degree, because I think we're never going to switch off completely, because the reality is we are so passionate about what we do, and that is part of the reason. But I also wanted to talk about this because I've seen it happen to myself in the last few weeks. I've been really, really busy and finding myself grabbing the laptop at 10 o'clock at night and thinking, I'll just get this done, I'll just do that, just keep pushing through. And I know that that doesn't end well. And for those of you that have been around listening to the Fearless Food Wiki for a long time will know that back, it's coming up 13, 14 years ago now, working in a commercial role in the food industry, I well and truly burnt out to the point of being bedbound. And I have done a lot of research. I have read every flipping book on the subject, but I really want to help people like you to recognise some of those signs, recognise when you are getting to the point where it doesn't feel like it's safe to stop. I'll talk about that a little bit more, and what you can do to stop it, because I have stopped it in the last few weeks, even though I could feel it snowballing. I've done some things that, so I wanted to share that because I thought it might be helpful. And I know that as we're starting a new season, you won't have heard from me for a while. And I think this is one of the things that I'm so passionate about helping people in food about. So the reality is, you know, you are in this constant pressure. So you've got, you know, cross-functional meetings. I always talk about feasibilities, don't I? Or you're often in situations in your job, particularly if you, well, it doesn't really matter if you work in a big or a small company. A lot of the time we have a lot of responsibility, but we don't have full control of the situation, which can feel quite unnerving for our brains. Brains like certainty. And that one thing that is certain in the food industry is that it will be constant change, and the brain doesn't like that because it doesn't feel safe. So things like sample requests at the last minute, a trial result coming back with a positive listeria, deadline dates, all of that, launch timelines, all of that stuff can feel almost like danger. And the reality is our brains are problem solving all day long, and we're in this kind of pressure cooker that never stops. And that means that our brains and our nervous systems stay in high alert all the time. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that, because our brain has 2 or 3 gears really, and it's not as simple as that obviously, but for the purposes of this podcast I'm going to talk about that. We have the threat alert mode, so that is the part of us that is scanning for problems all the time, reacting quickly, firefighting. It's the bit that actually really thrives on the pressure, and so many people in this industry thrive on that pressure. And then we've got the kind of drive mode as well. So this isn't necessarily about being in threat, but a lot of the time we can be quite driven by work. If in doubt, work harder. And that can sometimes look like being a bit of a workaholic. So it's not necessarily that there's a threat there, but it's that we kind of feel safe when we're doing and achieving and keep going. And then there's the calm mode. I mean, how often do we get to be in calm mode? But that's when you've got perspective, when you are able to recover from whatever's happened this week. This is where you can actually start to think strategically. You can start planning ahead. You can start making sensible decisions. But the reality is, in the food industry, we spend most of our day either in drive, trying to achieve, or in alert and threat mode, which is the mode that I'm going to talk to you about now, because that's really the part of your brain that is not letting you switch off at the end of the day. I know I've talked about it before a lot in terms of our brain's not very good at separating what goes on in a meeting or in the factory versus whether you really are under threat. And there's a really great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by somebody called Robert Sapolsky. And I've talked about this concept before, but if you think about it, zebras don't get ulcers because they're not worrying in the same way that we worry. And it's because, life is simpler. It's not saying it's less dangerous. It's definitely more dangerous. There's more actual risk of death. But the zebra runs away from the lion that is chasing it. The danger ends, and then the zebra shakes itself off and it goes back to grazing. It might be more wary next time it sees a lion, but it's not ruminating and replaying what's happened time and time again. It's just like, okay, I'm safe. Let's get on with it. Whereas humans, we're brilliant overthinkers, aren't we? So we replay the conversations, like coming out of a meeting going, oh my God, I wish I'd said it this way or that way. We're worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. I've definitely had this in the last 3 weeks where it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm thinking about the tiniest detail of the next day. It doesn't matter, but it really feels like it matters. And we can analyse and overanalyse problems over and over again. And it can mean that you are constantly worrying, constantly thinking about the risks, and that makes it hard to switch off, because a brain that is in that fight or flight or in that high alert mode, if you think about it, it's not safe for that brain to switch off. You've got cortisol, you have got adrenaline running through your blood because of the things that you were worrying about. So your brain's like, no, we can't go to sleep. We've got to think about these things. We've got to worry about what we're going to say in the feasibility tomorrow, because it can't separate a lion chasing after you versus it actually doesn't really matter. It's not going to be the end of the world. And like I say, I realised this about myself recently, that I saw it creeping back in, that I was working really hard and I was kind of between the drive. So you'll know, if you've followed the podcast for a while, that I have ADHD and I was diagnosed 3 years ago. So I understand better now why my brain struggles to switch off. But this isn't just about having ADHD. It's the drive. I have so many ideas. So it's not always worry. It's just I have so many ideas. So in the middle of the night, I'll be thinking about a new framework that I'm going to use in a training session. So I've got the drive going on. And then when you layer in the worry, have I remembered whatever books for school and money for this and all the work stuff on top of that, it's really hard to switch that off. And my realisation was that I wasn't actually as busy as I thought I was. And the stuff that I was worrying about actually wasn't as important as I thought it was. It was actually my nervous system telling me these stories. And the reality is that because I was so wired, I wasn't being rational in my decision making. I was definitely being snappy with my other half. And the things that I felt like had to be done at 10 o'clock at night didn't really need to be done at 10 o'clock at night, because everything started to feel urgent, and it wasn't urgent. So I know you might be listening to this thinking, no, everything is urgent, but I just want you to think about and step back and think about whether absolutely everything on your list is urgent, or if it just doesn't feel safe to slow down. Because what I've changed in the last couple of weeks is I have intentionally slowed myself down, and I find this super hard. I have forced myself to rest when I haven't wanted to. I've gone out for a walk in nature when I've just thought, God, I haven't got time for this. I've just got to get through what I'm doing. And I've been proactively doing things that calm my nervous system. And it will look different for everybody. But for me, that's movement, dancing like no one's watching around my kitchen, PT sessions, going for a walk. And it can be things like mindfulness. It can just be sitting in the garden with a cup of tea rather than like working through the whole time. And what I've found in doing that is that I'm not actually as busy as I thought I was. Let's just pause for a moment, because I want to share something with you that might be quite useful. Ever chase a test result at 5:59 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, we've been there too. That's why we're proud to be partnered with IFP Labs, a lab network that actually gets what it's like to work in food. They support businesses across Europe with accredited testing for food, feed, swabs, water and more. And they do it with a quick turnaround, expert insight and genuinely reliable service. IFP Labs is a laboratory network made up of companies who we know and trust because they're already supporting the people behind the products you love. Check them out at ifp-labs.com and breathe a little easier next time you've got a product launch riding on that test report. I've got something I need to say. The food industry is flipping brilliant, but it's also flipping hard sometimes. We ask a lot of people, tight timelines, constant change, making big decisions, lots of accountability. And sometimes we do that really early in people's careers. The question is, how do we support our teams to keep going through all these tough periods without burning them out? And that's exactly what we focus on in Fearless Resilience. It's a practical, evidence-led workshop designed for teams working in high-pressure environments. We look at how people actually respond to stress and give them tools to manage the pressure, stay clear-headed and perform at their best, while also protecting their well-being too. Because supporting people properly isn't just good for them, it's good for the business as well. And if you lead a team and this sounds relevant, you'll find details at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. And if you're listening and you're thinking, I'd really benefit from this, or the rest of the team would really benefit from this, send the details onto your manager. Right, let's get back to the episode. The things that felt like they were urgent were important, but they weren't necessarily urgent. So if I could just take the time to step back, I could go, do you know what? It is important, but it doesn't need to be done till next Thursday. So I'll put the time in my diary to do it next Thursday, and then I can forget about it. And there's a really great book called Burnout, Completing the Stress Cycle by two sisters actually called Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And what they talk about in that book is once the stressor, so the thing that has happened, so the meeting's ended, or you've got that crappy email that's really annoyed you, or, there's been a product recall or something, you can hold it together at work because you need to hold it together. And so you can stay calm in that situation. But if you do not complete the stress cycle, the adrenaline and cortisol builds up in your system that is there to keep you safe and keep you running away from that lion, but it stays there. And that's why you still continue to feel stressed once you get home, because your body hasn't processed that stress. The stressor was there, but you've not processed the stress. Once it has entered your body as stress, in terms of the hormones being released, which is automatic, like you can't stop that, it happens, it will get stuck on if you don't do something to process that. So processing that is doing things like movement, If you think about it, it's about running away from the lion or feeling like you're safe from the lion. So obviously it's not a lion, but it's doing that. Because some of the signs that you might recognise in me talking about if your nervous system is stuck on is constantly replaying conversations in your head. We all do that a little bit, but if it gets to the point where it's really unhealthy, where you start to overthink every single decision you make and you start to become actually a little bit indecisive when you get home from work and your other half says, what are we having for dinner? And you're like, I don't know, I've been making decisions all day, where you just don't feel like you can decide. You lose confidence in your decision making when your nervous system is stuck on. And it can look like things like snapping at people. This is where it shows up at home because, we can sort of take the mask on. All the things we wanted to say to people in a meeting that we couldn't, we then say at home. And it can lead to things like not being able to prioritise properly because, like I said, that everything feels urgent. And I've definitely felt that in the last few weeks where I'm looking at the list and I'm like, I don't even know where to start, because that then all leads to not sleeping. And sleep is the foundation of life, right? We all know that we don't make good decisions. We're grumpy, we eat crap, we don't exercise, all of that stuff when we haven't had a good night's sleep. So thinking about what you can do to help your nervous system to reset itself, to properly wind down so that you can get a good night's sleep is so important. And what I want to say is, if you're listening to this thinking, oh God, that's me, and starting to beat yourself up, because you're likely to, because you get in this negativity spiral as well. I've definitely felt that the last few weeks. Even when successes have happened, I've been like, oh, well, these are all the reasons it's not a success. So one of the things I've actually done is I've got a massive flip chart on the wall and I'm writing all my ta-da list down in massive writing in my office. Because when you are stuck in that nervous system being on, just know that it isn't necessarily your fault. It's your body trying to keep you safe, and it's a normal biological response. But you can do little things that start to help reset your nervous system. I'm not saying you've got to take 3 weeks off work and go on holiday. That might not be realistic. It would be lovely. But actually, it's the micro moments that we do to help our nervous system recover throughout the day and on a daily basis that matter more than going, I'm going to keep going until holiday. So it's things like just taking a pause. So when you get in the car before you drive home, just taking some slow, deep breaths for 60, 90 seconds, it kind of creates a reset that's kind of saying to your body, it's the end of the day. We don't need to worry anymore. We're back in the cave. We're fine. So it signals to your brain that situation's over, and it starts to calm your brain down by getting more oxygen to your prefrontal cortex, which is the grown-up, sensible part of your brain. Another thing that you can do is walk. Walking for me is a massive one. And I did it this lunchtime. I've been doing loads of videos and stuff all day, and I could have kept going, but I knew what I needed was a short walk to keep me going. And I know you're probably thinking, I ain't got time to go for a walk at lunchtime. And I get it, you might not. So fitting it in when you can. So a short walk after work would be amazing. If you're on a call that doesn't necessarily need you to be present the whole time, but you need to listen in, or if it's with people that would be okay with it, could you be walking with headphones in so that you're walking some of the stress out of your body? Can you just go and have a lap around the factory, or the outside of the building would be better because, we want to see the sun. But really thinking about how you can help your body process that stress physically is so important. Another thing that I want to share with you is the reality is we try and hold everything mentally in our head, and a lot of people are list writers, but a lot of people aren't, and they think, I'll remember that. But actually, if you write down, capture your worries at the end of the day, it helps your brain to switch off and let go of them overnight, because it's not thinking, I'm going to forget that. So just get it written down. And a big one for me is at the end of the workday, writing down the 3 priorities for the next day. Not the whole to-do list. It doesn't need to be. If I only get 3 things done tomorrow, what do they need to be? Because it helps you to let go and switch off and then come straight back into it in the morning. But the other thing is thinking about how you can create a transition from the end of your workday. So I think for people listening that are hybrid working or might be working from home a lot, this one's particularly important because you can go straight from being, in your work mode, in your office or sat at your kitchen table or whatever, and then go straight into parent mode or, partner mode or whatever. And you never give your brain and body a chance to kind of let go before you move on to the next bit of stress. So maybe create a playlist of music that you have a little dance to or just listen to, or a podcast, this podcast, just saying. Maybe, for me, I love cooking. Like, I just want everybody to leave me alone. I put a podcast on in my headphones and I cook, and that is my time to myself. And that is my split between still doing a chore, but it's one that I love. And framing it as something I love helps as well. But, doing some form of exercise, walking the dog, just giving your brain a gear change to say, right, we're slowing down now. And the other one that I just wanted to share as well, that I've really thought about over the last few weeks, that is so important to me, and it might be to you as well, is, particularly if you're a woman, I would say, is talking it out. Because this isn't about endlessly venting, but sometimes when you're holding so much stuff in your head, it just needs to come out. You just need a release, and writing it down is not enough, particularly if you're a more outgoing person that likes to talk things through. So think about who in your support network can you just have a good old vent to, not forever, but just to get that off your head. So a colleague, work bestie. I definitely have had work besties in my time where we've spent the whole drive home going blah, 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 but I felt so much better for it. A partner, a mentor, just enough to release that mental load so that you don't feel like you're carrying everything. So just as a recap, the tips that I've got for you that are little nervous system resets throughout the day, remember, I'm saying you don't need to take a load of time off for this, are the car park pause, take some deep breaths, walk out the stress, write down what you need to get out of your head and what needs to be done tomorrow, create a transition between your work day and your home day or home evening. And if you are somebody that really likes to talk about what's going on for you, find somebody to talk about it and release that mental load. Because remember that when your nervous system is constantly on high alert, which it often is in the food industry, your thinking becomes narrower. We get really black and white thinking. We can become very reactive. We can become defensive. We can feel like everything is urgent even when it isn't. And when you're calmer, you tend to have better judgment. You tend to be clearer in the way you communicate with people. And you tend to be more balanced, which makes you a better leader. And I think one of the things that I have learned since my burnout, and still have to relearn on a regular basis, is that rest is not something that you have to earn. It is important. It's actually a leadership skill in itself, because rest and recovery improves your overall performance. So remember, if you're feeling under pressure, you're not alone. This is something that a lot of people in food are feeling right now. And your brain is staying on high alert to protect you. But you can just take these small actions to calm your nervous system. They don't have to be huge changes, but they could make all the difference. So I hope you found this episode helpful. You're all doing a flipping brilliant job in the food industry, and we need to give ourselves some more credit, and we need to give ourselves rest and recovery time. So if there is somebody that you know needs to listen to this episode, share this episode with them, and make sure you're following the podcast for more straight talking. We have got some great stuff coming up this season. We've got some great guests. I'm really excited for it, but I just wanted to have a nervous system reset before we went. So I will see you next week, but in the meantime, be bold, be brave, be fearless, and be balanced. See you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, Be bold, be brave, be fearless.